I got the unsealed affidavit. I got my notes. I got my detective glasses on, and I got a lot of questions as to why and how. I'm the opinionated idiot. Let's do this. I'm sure by now a lot of you have read over this 18-page unsealed affidavit, and there has been a lot of questions as to who and why when I read through it. And I believe me, I've read through it quite a few times. But I want to make it very clear to everybody out there before watching this video that, first of all, I want to send out my condolences to the victims and the victims' families in this case. I'm sure the times that they're going through right now are terrible, and I wouldn't want to be in their position at all. But I want to make it very clear for the audience out there and for people that have been studying this case that this unsealed affidavit is public knowledge, and we're allowed to go over, to read through it, to look at the facts in this affidavit, to compare information, to scrutinize, to look over. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm allowing you or saying to go out and harass people that have been mentioned in this document, because that's not what you should do here. But we do have the right to ask why and who and what and where. So let's go over this. And I have a lot of notes here that I'm going to bring up, a lot of notes to go through this, to help me through this, because there's so much information to digest. And believe me, this is one of the most detailed affidavit that I have ever read through in my entire life. So let's go through it. Okay, I think the first thing that we need to look into is in this affidavit, it doesn't outline a motive. And I think that's been one of the biggest questions as to why. What is Bryan's connection with this house, the people in this house, or particularly to the girls in this house? Is this something that he had a past encounter with one of them? Or is this just someone that is a crazed maniac trying to fulfill a fantasy? Maybe, being out at WSU, knowing where the Moscow University is, how close he was to that, and going through all of this PhD training to become basically an expert in criminal minds. Maybe this sparks something inside of him. Maybe this is something that's been inside of him all his life that he's been wanting to let out and kind of quote unquote come up with a perfect crime. As we know that he was in that area around King Road months before this happened. So I don't know if he was in that location, stalking that location, looking for the perfect house, the perfect victims to commit the perfect crime. And I know that's been one of the theories that have been thrown out there. Another theory is that there's reports out there that Kaylee had received the worst of the stab wounds. So maybe Bryan had a connection to Kaylee. There's been a rumor out there that Bryan may have went on a date with Kaylee at one time and was rejected, and he's just acting out in revenge of that rejection. I think one of the more baffling things in this case when reading over this 18-page affidavit is that the lack of physical evidence. Now, we know that we have one crucial piece of physical evidence, and thank God that Bryan left that sheath behind that had a little piece of his DNA to tie him to this murder scene. I just find it crazy that reports have said that law enforcement officials said that this is one of the most bloodiest crime scenes they've ever seen. If that sheath wasn't left behind with Bryan's DNA on it, we may be waiting years to figure out what happened in this case. Yes, there's a lot of circumstantial evidence. There's a lot of evidence that puts Bryan in the area of that crime. There's cell phone data and camera footage, but with that lack of physical evidence, there could be a lot of doubt that Bryan did this. I think the biggest question in this case, the biggest why in this case, is why didn't DM call the police? And what I want to do is take you through the basic timeline to lead up to the question as to why. At 4 a.m., Xana receives a DoorDash. DM wakes up at the same time and says she thinks she hears Kaylee playing with her dog up on the 3rd floor. This is when Bryan must have entered the house. DM states that she thinks she hears Kaylee say something like, "There's someone here," but this could have been Xana because Xana is still awake using TikTok at 4:12 a.m. DM states that she looks out her bedroom after the comment but didn't see anything. DM states she opens the door a second time after hearing what she thinks is crying from Xana's room, and she hears a male voice say, "It's okay, I'm here to help you." At 4:17 a.m., security cameras pick up a whimpering and loud thud. Dogs also start barking that are caught on that camera at 4:17 a.m. DM opens the door for the third time after hearing crying, and she says she sees a male figure clad in black with a mask covering his face and his mouth. The male is 5'10", athletically built with bushy eyebrows. The male walks past DM as she stood in a frozen, shocked phase. DM locks herself in a bedroom after seeing the male. The male walks to the sliding glass door and leaves the scene. Police think the crime happened between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m., but Bryan's car was caught on camera leaving the scene at 4:20 a.m. This crime only took 20 minutes. So this has been the $1,000,000 question. Why didn't DM call the cops? Why didn't DM call the cops when she saw someone that was unfamiliar inside the house, especially dressed head to toe in black, and someone that just slips past her? She says she never recognized him before. I know there's been a lot of talk about trauma in the moment, how people react to trauma, how people react to being shocked. She said she was in a frozen, shocked phase. And I think the perfect example of this is if you've ever seen the movie Saving Private Ryan, there's a scene in that movie that a soldier gets frozen as a German soldier walks past him and almost hunkers in fear. And like I said, this is how people can react to a certain situation. So we don't know. We weren't there. But I'm sure that all of the other details will come out in trial. There's been other questions. Why did DM take so long to call the cops? Why did DM call friends first before calling the cops? There's a CBS News article that said on 11/29 that the surviving roommates summoned friends to the residence because they thought that one of the victims had passed out and wasn't waking up. Several people spoke to the 911 dispatcher that day. Now, believe me, I could sit here and continue to pile on DM, and we do. We have every right, I guess, to do so because this is public knowledge. And like I said in the beginning of this video, it doesn't give us the right to harass, but we can ask questions. And there are still a few more questions that I have. Why did Bryan return to the crime scene at 9 a.m.? Did he see DM and went back to maybe to kill her? Did he realize that he dropped the sheath and wanted to go back to retrieve it? Or did he simply want to just go back and relish in the crime, in the perfect crime, maybe in his mind that he just committed? And we've often heard in cases like this, killers or people that have killed will go back to a scene to see what's going on in that area, maybe to get that rush that they initially had doing the crime itself. And like I said, at this point, all we can do is speculate. All we can do is continue to read through this affidavit and the evidence that's been put in front of us. And we may not find all of the details in this trial. We may not get all the answers to all the questions that we have. We can only hope. I still think there needs to be a lot of investigation in this case. I think there's still a lot of unanswered questions that need to be answered. Bryan Kohberger's next hearing will be on January 12th, where he will be faced in front of a judge and have to put in a plea of guilty or not guilty. I know the world will be watching, just like all of you. And like I always say, opinions are like a-holes and everybody's got one. I'm the opinionated idiot. See you next time.